Lakeland Currents is sponsored by Nisswa Tax Service. Nisswa Tax Service offers tax preparation for individuals and businesses across from City Hall in Nisswa and on the web at nisswatax.com.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome to Lakeland Currents, where my guest today is Katie Paine Santos, who is a resident care coordinator for Lakewood Hospital System, the health system in the Staples-Motley area. And Katie, I didn't know I was going to say this, but she was the Caregiver of the Year in 2013 by the Care Providers of Minnesota. This award is given to a nurse who displays extraordinary skills to individuals residing in nursing facilities, assisted living, and receiving care at home. So that's quite an honor from the whole state. That's quite an honor.
Yeah,
Congratulations
it was a big
on
surprise.
that.
Thank you.
And our topic today is memory loss, which is something that's probably frightening to all of us. I think we think of it mostly with age, but it doesn't have to be an age issue. It can affect people at all age levels. And Katie, let's just talk a little bit about how you got into this line of work. This is, I have to really give you credit. This is caregiving at its highest level, I think.
Thanks. Well, I found my niche really early. I feel very lucky. I started working in a nursing home right out of high school, and I worked in activities, and I thought it would be great to go into nursing. So I did work as a nursing assistant, as an LPN, and right now I work as a registered nurse, as a resident care coordinator at the Secured Memory Loss Unit in Staples. I've been there for almost 10 years now, and I really enjoy it. It's still challenging and rewarding, just like it was when I first started. So,
well, let's just talk just a little bit. I know you're not a doctor in this, and so we don't need to get too technical, but when we talk about memory loss, there's a variety of different diagnoses for that, aren't there?
Yep. There's a lot of different terms that sometimes people use interchangeably, and they can and can't be. What commonly is confusing is sometimes somebody will say, oh, they have Alzheimer's. And then you hear dementia thrown into there. And what I like to tell my staff when they start is that dementia is kind of the umbrella for overall characteristics of symptoms, memory loss being one of those. And underneath that umbrella is where you have things like vascular dementia, Alzheimer's, Lewy body dementia, other things like that, that commonly come with different disease processes. Like Lewy body is more associated with people with Parkinson's, things like that. But that's under that whole umbrella of dementia.
And obviously a lot of things can happen to cause memory loss. Accidents, strokes. I remember I was at Abbott one time and looking at the children's ward, and I was absolutely blown away by all the little children that have had strokes. I mean, 2 and 3 and 4 and 5-year-old children. And, you know, we don't usually think of strokes with kids, but when you see a facility that specializes in that, it was really eye-opening for me to see that many little kids that have lost their ability to move their arms and legs, or maybe they have memory loss. And one of the things that you do in your field is that you spend a lot of time training families on how to deal with this, don't you?
Yeah, I think that that's a large part of my job. I care for the patients with dementia, but I think that overall I care for you can't care for the patient, not the family, or the caregiver. It's not always just the family, the person that's spending the most time with them, because it's a hard process to go through, and especially when the person gets to the stage where they need that inpatient care, where they're in a nursing home or a living facility that's long-term like that. They're usually not able to make a lot of their decisions on their own, so there needs to be an outside party that's assisting them with that or making those decisions fully for them. So that's why gets very involved with the family too.
The devastating part, of course, is when your wife or your husband has been your life partner, and all of a sudden those people can't do the things they used to do, can't help you. So it's not only traumatic, probably more traumatic in the long term for the family than it is the patient, isn't it?
Yeah, and we've talked about that a lot, that you lose that person. With this disease, it's not like somebody has a heart attack and they're gone. With this disease, it's the constant sense of loss. You know, they lost the ability to drive. Now they really aren't able to live at home anymore, so there goes your companion at home. Now you've come in and your loved one might not fully recognize who you are, so there's another loss. And then it can come to the point where they might not be verbal anymore and they don't remember how to express themselves, and then eventually they pass away and you lose them physically. They're finally gone.
So it's not like there was a death and you got to get over it. It's a process of stages and steps.
Yep. And we know, I mean, I'm sure you know that grief can affect everybody differently, and there's people go through stages of grief. Well, with a disease this long, you might go through periods where you're accepting, okay, this is where mom is now, this is what's going on, and then the next day it's like, why is this happening? And you go through all those different processes again. So it's a hard process to go through.
Do you want to talk a little bit about advanced care planning and what that means?
Yeah, and I found that, you know, this is something that we, like I said, a lot of people that come in, when the time they get to my unit, they usually aren't able to make decisions on their own or for themselves. So somebody else needs to be involved to help explain the kind of decisions they're making or make those decisions fully for them. So a couple of the things that I've talked to family members about before, and something that I think is really important when you have this new diagnosis, because sometimes memory loss isn't something that, it can be something sudden that happens and you don't have time to prepare, but it is something that can happen slowly over time. So there was a point when maybe, say, mom or dad could say, you know, if this happens to me, this is what I want done. Well, if you never have that conversation and you never designate someone to make those decisions for you, it makes it really hard on the rest of the family, and how hard on the patient to try and go through that. So I find it really, really important. And some of the things that we talk about when we talk about advanced care planning is making sure that you have somebody available to make those decisions for you.
So this is something you're suggesting families do even
Right.
before they have a problem.
Right, and I mean, this is something that can be done with anyone, is to have somebody available, because I even have one. It's a healthcare directive to have somebody in place that says, this is who I want to make my healthcare decisions for me if I'm unable to do so.
It's like a trust almost.
Right, and there's different levels of it, but a lot of times what I've found is that I've had families come in and they say, well, I'm mom's POA, and which means power of attorney. A lot of times when you look into it, sometimes it's only financial, and it doesn't give them that level of to say, I am making these healthcare decisions for mom. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So that's something to look at, and there's good comparisons forms out there. I know our facility has comparison forms that talk about your healthcare directive, a written document that actually expresses who's going to make your, decisions, who's going to do it, and that's something that can be done free of charge. It just has to be notarized or witnessed by two people.
When do you suggest that families do this? Let's say that the mom and dad are both still alive. So is this something that you would suggest they do when they're in their 50s or 60s or?
I guess I feel like it's important. I mean, me having a baby on the way, you never know what's going to happen, so I felt like I needed to have one in case something happened.
Not age related.
I don't think it is. I think it's important we don't know what's going to happen, so I think it's important to always make sure that you're
planning for that.
Yeah, to be able to have somebody that's going to be able to know what you want and have your healthcare facility know how to contact them and know that they are that person if you are unable to say that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so it's almost like a living will in a sense, in that
Yep.
you're dealing with all aspects of that person's life.
Right.
Because, as you said, sometimes memory loss comes over a long period of time, and you can see it in people. Can't remember where they put their keys, they can't remember how to cook, but it can come fast too, can't it? I have a friend
Yep.
whose wife was diagnosed a year ago. She can't even speak today. I mean, it's just, that's
Yep.
how quickly it happened.
Yep.
So just being prepared in life for life's unexpected
Yeah.
twists.
Well, and I think it's what's really important too, after you have a person, and something else that's really important when you're picking that person to be your healthcare agent, know that they have to be someone that is able to like act willingly into your consistently with your wishes, but also that they're able to cope with making difficult healthcare decisions. Because even if you think of every scenario that could possibly go on and tell them this is what I would want in this scenario, something else might come up, and it's hard. Because imagine you having to make decisions for someone else and never having the conversation knowing what they would want. Mm-hmm. I see families where it's hard on the family member to be like, I honestly don't know what mom would have wanted in this situation. I'm supposed to make this decision, but I don't know. Mm-hmm. And she's not the mom or the mother isn't in any ability to say or to make that decision at all. So making that stuff known can make the whole process for the resident or the family so much easier. And when I say decisions, it's, going through dementia, looking at some decisions that do come up, it's like, okay, so you have this diagnosis that kind of comes out. You're starting to see memory loss, and whether or not it's a specific diagnosis saying, yeah, we're seeing some cognitive changes, or maybe, you're not really safe to drive anymore and your driver's license got taken away, but you're still able to communicate that, yes, if this were to happen, if I all of a sudden had an infection, I would want to go into the hospital, or if something happened to me. But things to talk about would be at that time. So
do you suggest this all be put in writing?
Yeah.
So that other family members
and that's the
agree
thing
to
is,
it?
I think it's really, I've had some families that once their dad had gotten the diagnosis, they all the kids, the wife, everyone sat down and said, okay, so Dad has this new diagnosis and we know it's going to progress. That's the other thing with dementia, is that it usually always progresses to the point where they aren't able to communicate for themselves. So they are going to need someone to say what they want and make their decisions. So Dad's got this disease. What are we going to do about it? How long are we going to keep him at home? And if he's at home, who's going to be able to provide what? And for how long? And when do we decide that it's not safe anymore? And if it's not safe anymore, what are we going to do next? And having the patient was part of that conversation the whole time. So he got to say, I don't want to put your mother under that stress. If this is how I'm acting, I want someone to help me be into a nursing home. I want that, because I don't want your mother to feel like she has to take care of me, that kind of stuff. So imagine the relief on that family when the father was starting that and they said, it's time to go into a nursing home. And even though his memory doesn't remember making that decision and it was hard on him to have to make that move, the family knew that's when he had his cognitive ability to process through what he wanted. They knew that's what he wanted, and so they were able to do that without any feeling of guilt or, do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, there's a lot of things to go through with that. And then as the disease progresses, looking at things like whether or not you would want CPR done. I think it's really important for people to really find out the facts on that kind of process, because going through, we had a lot of training on how to go through what's effective and what's not, and some of the statistics were shocking even to me. Like if you are older, weak, and living in a nursing home, CPR works less than 3% of the time.
Wow.
I mean, I was like, I had to read it again. I was like, I didn't realize that would be the case. But, you know, this is from making choices and respecting choices. So I'm just really finding out the facts when you're looking at, okay, and what does CPR entail? And why would it be beneficial and why would it not be beneficial? That kind of thing.
So it's kind of the right to die almost. I mean, some people
Right.
might decide not to spend the time and the money and the effort if we get to that point to try to keep us
Right.
going.
Well, and CPR can be something that is pretty traumatic. People a lot of times will break ribs, and a lot of times if CPR is effective, it doesn't mean that you're coming back exactly the same as you before your heart stopped or whatever. So it's
So when you have patients that enter your facility, this is what I would say, a lot of what you're talking about you would ideally do before they get to your facility when you do the advanced planning.
Yep.
Now, what kinds of things do you do when your families come into your facility? What are some of the training things you do with them then?
When they come in, well, a lot of times I try and it's all individual, but a lot of times I try and find out where they are in this process and if they know, you know, what mom would have liked or not liked. And then there's a period where we really try and get to know the patient and what's going on with them and family dynamics. Different, you know, people come to me at all different stages, and some people are able to still recognize their kids and their loved ones or their spouses, and other people can't. So a lot of times we look at things like what might be frustrating for the patients, and families might not always know. Like I have one family member that he did such a great job. He came in one day and sat down next to his mom and he said, "Hi, Mom, I'm your son. Do you want to see some pictures of your grandkids?" And she just looked at him and she said, "Yes." And that I was like, "You're doing such a good job." And they got to have a wonderful visit, but that could have happened so much differently, because a lot of times I think family members sometimes want to come in and see where the person is at. So they might come in and say, "Hi, how are you doing today? Do you remember who I am? Do you remember my name?" Because it kind of gives maybe the person some sort of reference of where that patient is. But I've seen this happen where for that poor patient, they might not be able to get across the name or exactly recognize who that person is, but it's just frustrating and I feel like they probably have their feelings hurt because they can't say. So I think that's something to
So
keep
it's a
in
good
mind.
idea when people get to that stage to be able to help them every time, know who you are.
Yeah, and
why
that's
you're
something
there.
that we do training with staff too, because I have patients that I've worked with for 5 years, and every time I go in there and I'll say, "Hi, so-and-so, I'm Katie, I'm the nurse today." And if I need to go back to them in a couple hours, I'll say the same exact thing, because I know that they probably won't remember.
They don't remember that.
And they might not remember the situation that they're in either. They might feel like they're in their apartment. They might feel like they're in a restaurant. And so having a nurse come up to you to want to take your blood pressure or help you go to the bathroom or give you some pills, if you think that you're in a restaurant and someone comes up and doesn't introduce themselves to say that, it can be kind of scary or confusing, and where if you just start right off the bat and they know where they stand, it can make that go a lot easier.
I know everybody's individual, but in memory loss, do you see a lot of depression that comes with it, or is it just that every person's different?
I think every person's different, but I think that sometimes we see, I think we see reactions to frustrations and environmental stressors, and sometimes that can kind of come across as signs of depression. It can come across as weepiness. It can come across as isolating themselves. Something that's really common is in earlier stages I've seen where people don't want to go out of the house or into situations that aren't part of their regular routine because they don't know what's going to happen, and they know the patient knows enough that they're confused and they don't want to be caught off guard, and so then they tend to like isolate themselves, or their world gets kind of smaller and smaller.
Do you see much anger with memory loss?
Yeah, you can. And that's something that I think can be really hard for families too. And I think it all comes down to, you know, what part of the brain is being affected. But judgment, all that stuff goes out the window. So when it comes to how a person reacts, you know, if you or I stubbed our toe really hard, but we were in a public place, we probably would know to, and then just kind of walk away. Where if they stubbed their toe really hard, a dementia patient, they might not know. It might come off as something really aggressive or angry, you know, just because they don't know how to express it, and they don't have that filter that I guess a lot of us would have.
Yeah, but one of our presidents, Ronald Reagan, got memory loss, dementia pretty bad, and he actually lived a long life, I think probably 8 or 10 years. And is it pretty typical that the last part of their lives are pretty much almost in a vegetative state? Or is that just independently individualized too? It's
individualized too, but you do see a common set of things that come with end of life. One of the things I was going to talk about is the ability to swallow and speak. Is something when somebody does have dementia, and a lot of times it depends on your comorbidities. You know, if somebody has diabetes and heart disease and all these other things, they might die from complications of those, and not specifically just the dementia. But somebody who's pretty healthy and has the dementia can sometimes live for a longer period of time. And when they get to the end stages, things that come up is you lose the ability to swallow and to know, like when you put a bite of food in their mouth, they might not know what to do with it.
Really?
Yeah, and that's something that actually is really, really hard. And that's where making decisions and talking about that kind of a situation that might come up, because it makes it so that the person can't eat sometimes. And I know that there's people that have had strokes too, the same thing, where if they take a drink of regular water, it goes into their lungs almost, because their swallow reflex isn't fast enough. And so they need things like their liquids all need to be thickened. And so what you see a commonly dementia patient actually die of is usually because of the swallowing issue that comes up, or just that they stop eating and they're not going to eat or drink. And so aspiration pneumonia is something that's really common, and that's something where if you're taking a drink of thickened water or anything, it ends up going into your lungs. And sometimes it can, like if you or I were to do that, we would probably cough and choke. Sometimes with a dementia patient, that swallow reflex is so far gone that it's called silent aspiration, where it can go in there and...
So they block their breathing.
Well, and they start getting a pneumonia because there's a foreign body in their lungs. So they die of the infection. The thing is that the swallowing isn't something that can be fixed. So a really hard decision for families sometimes.
So that's one of those where you decide, are you going to intravenously feed them, or are you going to let them take the natural way?
Right, and that's something that's really hard, is because a lot of people's spirituality and religions come into play at this point too. You know, is tube feeding something that you would want to do? And tube feeding also won't guarantee that the person won't aspirate, because all that stuff is connected up here. So even though it's going straight into your stomach, and would you put your loved one through a surgery to have a tube placed? And with somebody with dementia, are they going to leave it in place? A lot of times it's not feasible, you know. But something that's common is people will a lot of times say, let mom or dad drink or eat what they want, and if they do develop a pneumonia, then we'll treat it. But a lot of times when somebody gets to the end stages, you'll treat a pneumonia, and then they'll keep aspirating, and then you'll turn around and you'll treat another one and treat another one. And so a lot of times, one of the questions that we usually ask families when we get to that point, we talk about, do you want to continue to do antibiotics? because at some point they're not going to work anymore. And how hard is it on mom and dad, or mom or dad, to give them the antibiotics and then have them start coughing on choking again. So that's a really
hard decisions, aren't there?
They are, and I think it's really hard for families when they haven't been able to have that conversation with mom or dad before.
And now what do you do?
And now they cannot communicate what they want.
And if there's more siblings, it's even more complicated,
Right.
isn't it?
So having mom or dad be able to say that in front of the other siblings, and everyone knows that going into the disease, I think is huge.
Wow.
The other thing that's really common is bladder infections or UTIs, because they're just not getting the oral intake, and the more dehydrated you get, the more common that can be.
We're down to our last minute.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's really good. So what I'm taking out of this is the importance of planning before these events occur in people's lives.
Yep.
That's a really big thing, and I bet that makes your jobs a lot more manageable, doesn't
Yep.
it? When you can know what the families want when people come in.
Well, and I think for me, it makes it so much easier to watch a family that knows what that person wants, and you can tell that they're coping with it, where it's really hard to help someone make that decision. But honestly, it comes down to it's your decision to make for this person. And if they don't know, they don't know. It's hard.
Wow.
So.
Well, I can tell by the tone of your voice that you are a person that cares, and I can see why you got that statewide award.
Well, thanks.
And good for you. I think we need people like you in those positions, and it's a sad place to have to be. So
Yeah.
it's good knowing that there are people like you who care when your families get to that
thanks.
stage. You bet. So thank you for being
All
on the
right.
program. We appreciate
Yeah.
it very much.
Thanks for having me.
You've been watching Lakeland Currents, where we're talking about what you're talking about. I'm Ray Gildow. So long until next time.